afternoon. I'm Trista Keaton, and you're watching The Source. This episode, we will discuss Little 5 Weekend and the philanthropy events held before. Good afternoon. I'm Trista Keaton, and you're watching The Source. This episode, we will discuss Little 5 Weekend and the philanthropy events held before. Anna Sherrill, coordinator of community-based learning, scheduled the programming for Supermarket Sweep for the upcoming races last week. We talked with her about the turnout of these events and what Little 5 is really about.
In 1956, the Union Board sponsored the race as a fundraiser for the American Cancer Fund. And 14 all-male teams from various living units competed. And then over the years, it's obviously adapted and it's become this massive campus-wide event that lasts for a week. And we still to this day have riders that are doing a competitive bike race. They used to do it around Blackstock Stadium, and now we have moved to doing it around campus, which has been that way for a while. All that to say is this race originated in doing philanthropic work. And I think that somewhere down the line, it kind of transitioned out of that. We partner with the Purdue Extension Office. And the Purdue Extension Office is doing education and awareness on food insecurity. And then we also work with the local 4-H. And they modeled it off of Mindy Duckett, who used to work at our local Purdue Extension Office, was kind of the coordinator and liaison between all of us. And she had a son who went to, and this is where I didn't say the college before because I could never remember if it's Grace or Hope College, a university up north. Her son went there, and she saw what they were doing at their institution and said, this is fantastic. I want to bring it back to my community. So this started about 7 years ago because Mindy saw what was happening with her students and competing in this massive competition. At their school, they go to the store and they do the race itself, Supermarket Sweep in the store. The events of Little 5, Supermarket Sweep just kicks it off. There are several different events and opportunities throughout the week, and I would share the flyers with you for your reference too. But the first day is Supermarket Sweep, and then the second day we do voter registration with Turbo Vote. So each team will have the opportunity to register and also come and engage with the speaker that's talking about how to be involved, making sure that your voice is heard beyond the election. Wednesday is technically the rides part, which is time trials is Wednesday. Thursday we're doing a blood drive. Friday we're doing street sprints. Saturday we're doing the race itself. All that to say, so there's technically 4 different organizations that we're working with throughout the week. And then on top of that, the week itself is a massive fundraiser for United Way of Central Indiana. So we're working with 5 different partners for Little 5 this year. And all of the events itself have a benefit or a cause greater than Little 5. But the reason why the teams participate, to answer your question, is they get points for everything that they do. So anybody who's participating in the race wants to also participate in the philanthropic events. And we've kind of managed to switch the system a little bit so that 55% of points for Little 5 to win the week long is philanthropic events. I definitely think it has historically been Greek affiliated, where a lot of chapters participate in this. And I would love to call it out and say it definitely has to do with the access and resource, right? So the bikes themselves, the riders are using, are paid for either by themselves or by their organization. And so it does inhibit for other people to be able to get involved. And I know that we are working towards making it more accessible in years to come for any rider. But all that to say is I think that my goal in the philanthropic events, none of them are restricted to people that are just racing. So anybody who wanted to create a team for any of these events could still have a fighting chance at pulling their weight in the week of Little 5 competition. Supermarket Sweep is on Monday, April 15th. It starts at 10 a.m. and will go until 9:30. So anybody who stops into Kroger will be handed a pamphlet and say, hey, while you're here, if you would mind considering donating some of these items while you're shopping. And we give you exactly what we need or what our pantries have asked for. And then our pantries actually will be there collecting the donations at the exit. And so it's a direct result right back to our community, which is awesome. In ways for Kroger too, if you'd rather donate a gift card, for example, or write a check, there are options available for that.
Mhm.
I know that sometimes getting to Kroger can be a challenge within itself, especially if people have class.
Mhm.
Tuesday, voter registration. We're just encouraging all of campus, please check your voter registration status, especially being an election year.
Mhm.
And then there is a speaker from United Way of Government Affairs coming to campus from 4 to 5 p.m. in Dasky in Hoover. And he's just going to be talking about what it means to be engaged beyond the election season and how you can advocate for your own community. And then Wednesday, time trials. That's really for our writers. And then Thursday will be the blood drive. That'll be in the Union Ballroom,
Okay.
and that'll be from 11 to 5 p.m. They would love for people to register. While they will look at walk-ins, we anticipate high foot traffic that day, and so they probably won't have time for many walk-ins.
Yeah.
So we encourage you guys to register if possible. Make sure you bring your ID with you when you come as well.
Okay.
And then Friday, the street sprints itself, and Saturday, the crit race. That'll be a super fun, engaged event. It's kind of like the culmination of everything. And these writers are responsible, like I mentioned before, doing that massive campaign fundraiser for United Way of Central Indiana. So each of those writers has been fundraising for the past week.
We now move into the War Room with PAC student and researcher Jake Wood.
Thanks, Trista, and welcome to the War Room. For our first story, a billionaire in Vietnam has been sentenced to death in a fraud case worth $44 billion. Authorities in Vietnam concluded one of the largest legal cases in the recent history of the country, with a conviction of all defendants on charges of embezzlement, including billionaire Chung My-lan. The case stemmed from a government crackdown on corruption led by the country's ruling Communist Party, in which the Vietnamese government targeted politicians and business people alleged to be involved in bribery and embezzlement. Chung My-lan in particular was the head of a real estate investment company, as well as the owner of Saigon Commercial Bank, from which she embezzled billions of Vietnamese dong through loans made out to herself. Her conviction makes her one of the first women in Vietnam to be given the death penalty for corruption and a major turning point in the government's campaign. For our next story, Indian forces operating in Indian-occupied Kashmir claim to have killed an alleged militant in the Rajpura district of the region. This was the first firing incident in 3 months, marking the end of the longest period of no events like these occurring in recent times. Indian sources claim the deceased individual to be a member of Lashkar-e-Taiba, a militant organization aiming to separate Kashmir from India and merge it into Pakistan. However, local sources denied that the man killed was a militant and instead insisted that he was a civilian that was killed extrajudicially. They allege that the circumstances match a pattern of what are referred to as quote-unquote fake encounters, where Indian soldiers will execute a non-combatant and subsequently plant evidence to suggest that they were actually a member of a rebel group. According to the Shinar, an independent Kashmiri media service, the individual killed was arrested weeks prior to the alleged shootout, had no affiliation to any militant group, and was set up to be executed. Regardless, the incident shows that the conflict in Kashmir is far from over. That's all for the War Room. Be sure to follow us at all social medias at D3TV to stay updated on the real news.